well be one of the kinds of issues that you really have to examine a lot closer, because I think you and I could be walking down the street, and if someone claims that I look threatening to them and they shoot me, what happens next? So I think the law may get a greater scrutiny, but I don't think the outcome is going to be what most people are pressing for. I think the arrest and the trial is probably the most that I thought would ever happen in this case.
And I think ultimately he does deserve a fair trial. He clearly acted stupidly on his part. When he called the police, when he dialed 911, they told him, okay, you've reported it, stay away. Leave him alone. And he clearly pressed the issue. He went after him. Whatever happened. We don't know. He deserves a fair trial for what happened, but ultimately his own stupidity led him to what happened. Mike, how do you feel on this?
Well, this is one of those instances where you really would have liked to have seen a video camera around at the time, but of course there wasn't one around. So it becomes a he said type of situation, and fortunately enough for Trayvon, it's not. But it's something that's got to play out in the courts, and I agree with you. I think definitely there's going to be a lot of people dissatisfied with the ruling, whichever way it goes.
Yeah.
My only comment would be I thought that Mr. Zimmerman showed a lack of judgment, perhaps, in pushing the issue a bit, but we don't really know what happened when everything went down, and I think that's the biggest problem with this case.
I have to disagree with all of you.
Okay.
Number one, the data are not in, as illustrated by last week's photograph from ABC of his skull with all the blood on it. Everyone's rushing to judgment, including the Reverend Al Sharpton, who splits his time between advocacy and allegedly reporting on MSNBC. Number one. Number two, to my knowledge, there is no law in Pennsylvania comparable to Florida's, unlike what you just said. Number three, your point about acting stupidly really is reminiscent of what happened with Obama with the beer summit. You're drawing conclusions prematurely. And most importantly...
Well, I disagree with that.
You are drawing judgments about stupidity prematurely because it may very well be that he was trying to go away.
The 911 tape told him.
Maybe he was trying to go away, and maybe we'll find out that if you look at the whatever witness is there, that Mr. Martin followed him and then put him on the ground.
So the bottom line is telling his girlfriend that this guy is following him.
The bottom line point
is going to go after this guy.
The bottom line point is you're drawing a conclusion without knowing the facts.
Right.
And the more important issue globally regarding America is black on black crime, which is much more important than the way Al Sharpton is portraying this, because the New York Times now says he is a white Hispanic in order to try to make it look like it's a racial issue. It is not a racial issue. He is being vilified in the media inappropriately, and you're perpetuating it, you're abiding by it, and you are being silent regarding it.
Well, no, I'm not. It's interesting. I never raised race as an issue at this
And
table.
you're being quiet about it.
No, I'm not being. See, if you want to debate Al Sharpton,
correct,
then Al Sharpton can come on his program, and I'm sure he'll be willing to debate you.
Do you agree with what he did? Do you agree with how he invaded
I think that the mistake that was made in this case was someone was killed. No investigation was done. That's where this whole tragedy started.
There was an investigation.
There was no one was arrested. No one was charged. It was almost like, well, he says he shot him based on the law. When someone is killed, there is typically an investigation done that supports that, and that's where I think that this issue got off track. It wasn't done immediately as it should have been.
It was done immediately.
Fortunately, there was one done, and now I'm willing to let the justice system play out.
Right. Do you agree with he was stupid? Do you agree he was stupid?
I'm just saying to you,
do you agree he was stupid? Yes or no?
I'm willing
no,
to
answer the question.
I'm
yes
not,
or no?
I'm not here to answer it. I'm just saying to you, I'm willing to let the justice system play out.
All right.
I think he was stupid, and let's go on to the next question. Hopefully we'll be a little bit smarter about this.
Okay.
Until Al Sharpton.
Let's dial things back to Pennsylvania, and especially more locally to the 153rd District. We recently had a special election where Madeline Dean, defeated Nick Mariachi for Josh Shapiro's old seat. It was a rather contentious election in such a short period of time, and we're going to basically see a rematch again in November for that same seat. Greg, you have a little bit more insight into this, I'm sure. So can you give us your prediction for what's going to happen?
Well, I think clearly in November the results will be the same, probably even by a wider margin. I think it would have been a wider margin in this election if there wasn't a lot of confusion between on voters' part as to that they had to vote in a special election and a primary election. And I can equate this to both sides, because the fallout, there was a higher number of people who voted in the primary for her than voted in the special election. Why? Because they probably thought, this is the button. They're not used to voting for a person twice on the same ballot. But I think the result will be the same, because the November election is going to be driven from the top, from the presidential election. It's going to be a lot more straight party voting. Democrats have the registration edge. You could see it in the special election. I think that's what carried Madeleine now. I've been around 25 years. I remember when the Republicans had the edge. All they had to do was get their voters out and they won. I don't think a special election, there's not enough time to try and educate the voters on all of your issues. It boils down to the parties getting out their vote. I think that's what we saw, and I think that'll be even a greater influence come November in this election.
Okay. Dr. Sklarov?
Well, the bottom line is I think you're right. There's going to be much more of a party voting in November. And when Obama is rejected, then hopefully Madeleine will go along with him.
Now, Mike, I know this is a little bit outside because you're not in the 153rd.
Yeah, it's a tough one for me because not being a Horsham resident, I'm not really up on the Abington political scene. Just from what I've read, I mean, my preference would be for Mariachi because he's a Republican, obviously. I like the fact that he's a lawyer as opposed to Ms. Deans purely as an academic, it appears, and she's worked as an Abington commissioner, I think, as well.
She's a lawyer too.
Yeah, she's a lawyer also.
Yes, yeah. She teaches at LaSalle English. I think.
Right, I saw that. And, I saw that today. So I'd be hard pressed to give you an opinion on that one.
I think the other part of it, in addition to the straight party voting, and I'm just talking as I look at politics. I think in the special election, that gave Mariachi his greatest shot. Mm-hmm. Based on my comments about the fall, to win now. I think as the fall approaches, political parties tend to look at races and say, where should I put my money? Where can I win? If I were a Republican, and I'm not, would I be looking at this race and saying, boy, I think I got a great shot to win that. I'm going to pump a lot of my money into it. I don't think so. I think there are races outside of Abington that they feel they could win. That's where I would be putting my money. Obviously, they're not calling me, but that's probably another view that I would put on that.
Okay, I think it's fair. I think it's going to be an interesting November, and I think what's going to be even more interesting is when we come back from these messages.
What is warm and quiet, soft and squishy and beautiful? It's the new cushion vinyl floors from Specialty Floors. They give you the look of stone, ceramic tile, and hardwood floors. And Specialty Floors has thousands of beautiful, soft carpets made from recycled plastic bottles. The PET fiber not only saves you money, but it also lessens our dependence on foreign oil. That's Specialty Floors in Abington Township, Easton and Woodland Roads, Roslyn Valley.
My time is very valuable to me.
Lots of people depend on me for their everyday needs.
If you do go back, it has to be to a place that'll be worth it.
I needed a place with lots of options, with a great reputation.
Employers know the difference.
Oh yeah. I'm glad I chose Penn State.
Penn State Abington. Get to a better place.
Penn State. Everyone knows it.
For the best networking and business building programs, join the Eastern Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce, an action-oriented organization dedicated to promoting its members and the economic health of Eastern Montgomery County.
The following segment is brought to you by Premier Designs Jewellery. Spend just one evening a week as a jewellery lady and you can earn an average of $1,000 per month. For more information, call 267-334-4523 or email Joanne S. Vasquez at Comcast.net.
Welcome back. I'm Mark Lombardi, Abington Patch regular and Suburban Geek blogger. And again, we are off the record. Again, this is lefties versus righties, or righties versus lefties, however you prefer. With us, we have Dr. Robert Sklarov, Abington Republican Committee member, former Abington Republican Committee member.
No. I'm a current.
Oh, you're current. I'm sorry.
Right. I'm a former Democrat because the party left me.
Okay.
I was a Watergate freak.
I couldn't understand why the party would possibly leave you. Mike Shortall, Cranky Man blogger and Republican committee man in Horsham. And then last on my side of the table, we have Greg Holt, state committee member on the Democratic side. We've been talking the gamut of national, state, and local politics and topics, going right along to, what we've talked about in the primary election. Something that happened for all of us, I'm sure, is the new voter ID law came into effect. And I don't know about all of you, but I was asked for my ID at my polling place. And do you gentlemen think that this is a good idea or a bad idea? Greg?
I'd love to say that this whole law is designed to suppress the vote to help defeat President Obama. That's why it's here. But having said that, it's the law. And I and many others will work very hard to make sure those who need to have a photo ID and don't have one yet have that for the election. I could wail on about how bad I think it is and why I think it's a bad law, but it is the law. And I think in some cases, if it is the law, why spend your time tilting that windmill? We'll just work to make sure people have that photo ID and they can, when they go to the polls, not only this year, but when Governor Corbett runs for re-election, they can wave that photo ID as they go into the booth and say, "Goodbye, Governor." But for now, I don't like it, but we'll work to make sure that citizens can comply with it.
Okay. Mike, how about you?
I'll take issue with one thing you said, Greg, and that was that the law was designed to defeat President Obama. I don't really think it was, because we've had states have had voter ID laws since the 90s. Pennsylvania perhaps is just catching up with the current requirements, and a lot of other states seem necessary. In a day now where you can't use a credit card without using an ID, it boggles my mind that people would have a problem with being able to prove your identification before you vote. I think I think the state's got to do a better job of educating the people and the poll workers. I worked the polls on primary Tuesday, and we were the people who were working there. I'm just a poll watcher, so I'm not up there working the mechanics of the election. But the people who were there working in the polls themselves were very, very confused about what they were supposed to do. There was no guidance that was provided, and I think that the state's got to do a better job of telling the people who are in charge of the vote how they're supposed to run things.
Okay. How about you?
Well, actually, the guidance was provided, but the question is whether or not it was implemented. Couple key points. The reason for the bill was not to suppress the vote.
Which he said. Okay.
The reason for the bill was to decrease fraud. The concept of vote early, vote often. The concept that in Philadelphia you'll have a precinct where more people will have voted than are registered to vote in that precinct. That kind of problem, which is real and acorn induced and propagated. The bottom line is that when there was a problem in our poll regarding how to approach the voter, I rectified it by advising and educating the judge of elections in the process that what you had to do was simply ask them for their ID and then say to them, if you don't have it, that's okay, here's a piece of paper for next time. So it was not combative and it was educational. This